Hey guys, Craig with JS Racing Products here. This video is going to be to go over with you the function and how to set up one of our really popular wastegates. This is our 44mm style. This is actually modeled after the tile style MVR water cooled. Honestly, we've rarely use the water cool feature on one of these particular setups. The water cooling feature is primarily used on imports where the wastegate is very close to the head and a lot of heat is being stuck into this. In our V8 applications, we usually keep these pretty far away from the head. You know, they're usually out underneath the turbo flange itself, you know, isolated and cooled down. But let me go over the water cooling feature with you in case you decide it's something you want to run, and at least show you how to set it up. If you don't want to run it, then you don't use any of these pieces, you just discard them. You're going to have these two nipples and these two small Allen screws. Here in the front of it are the two Allen screw holes. You throw a little bit of pipe dope on these or Teflon tape, seat them in there, and seal those two little holes off. Those are just bleeder holes, okay? Next is these two nipples. They just get some Teflon tape stuck on the threads, and you'll see that there's two ports along the sides of this. Like this. Let me get them started. There you go, and you'll snug them down. And that would be basically water in, water out to cool the wastegate. Now, that would be tied into your heater hoses or any source of coolant in your system. Like I said, I never use these. It's just an extra feature we have in case we use this on like an import, something that's running anti-lag and stuff like that, that's going to really push a lot of heat through the wastegate. Okay. So that's the water cooling feature. Okay guys, now I'm going to explain to you exactly what a wastegate is and why you need one in a turbo system. Alright, so let's set that aside for a second. We're going to go over how you're going to plumb the turbo up. The turbo is going to be plumbed in such a way that you're going to join both halves of the engine. Now we're talking V8 LS motors here obviously, so there's going to be two exhaust manifolds. Usually in my kits we tend to reuse the stock manifolds and we stick V-bands on the end of them. Or you buy manifolds that are already ready with V-bands, and you run the exhaust pipe off of those to your location or near your location, and you join them together. Now there will be pictures on my website, jsracingproducts.net, a customer gallery where I have a lot of my customers who are willing to go ahead and send in screenshots and pictures of how they've done this, so you can get some ideas from there. And if you buy one of my kits, I'd appreciate if you'd send us pictures, and you can find the email on the website to submit it. And we'll put your pictures up too to show people. But basically you're going to join the two halves together into a merge, and then you're going to run that merge into this T4 flange, and you end up welding it into here. So this turbo will get bolted to this. So regardless of where you have this under your hood, the wastegate has to go somewhere between the flange, you know, before the flange and the turbo, but after the spot where you merge the two exhaust pipes together. Putting it in that exact location, regardless of exact scenario, but as long as it's between those two items, gives you complete control over boost pressure. And here's how. Exhaust flowing through the turbo and coming through here into the turbo's exhaust housing, the turbine keeps spinning it and spinning it and spinning it and spinning it. As RPM goes up, the turbo just keeps spinning, and there'd be no way to regulate the boost pressure because it would just keep climbing. So this acts like a throttle. You're going to end up running a vacuum line to this off of your intake manifold, and inside of this is a spring. The spring has a diaphragm underneath it, and when enough boost pressure flows into this, it pushes that diaphragm against the spring with enough pressure, the spring has to eventually start to move, and when it moves it lets this valve lift, and exhaust will now say, yo, hey, it's a lot easier to get out here than going through the turbo. Let's go this way, guys, you know, and they'll come in here, come out here. By the way, this will be what's called your dump tube. You got another flange here and a clamp, and you'll end up putting this onto here, and you'll end up running a small piece of exhaust pipe down to the ground, out from under the engine bay, or even recirculated back into your actual exhaust, however you want to do it. Just make sure it's exited away from the turbo's inlet so air and whatnot can't blow the burnt exhaust back into the turbo and suck it back in and regurgitate it. Anyway, so the exhaust will go through there, and this valve will actually hover and move in and out in such a way, based off that vacuum pressure or that boost pressure off through the line, that it'll throttle your turbo to maintain a set boost level. The way you determine the set boost level is how much spring pressure is in here. to a point. There's also adding a boost controller, and we'll cover that in a second. There's already a pretty nice light spring stuck in these from the factory, which means depending on your application, you might make 6 pounds, 8 pounds, 10 pounds, something low, depending on exact back pressure and your exact setup. But you may find that you want a little bit more than that of just spring pressure, because the way I like to do this and tell people is to run at least half, if not 3/4 of your targeted boost level with spring pressure alone, and then do the rest with a boost controller. Whether it's a manual boost controller or electronic, it's up to you. We'll give you a couple extra springs with a 44 millimeter, and you can stack these together. See how it fits inside there, inside this. When you take this top off with these Allen wrenches, pop it off. Actually, it'll fling apart. That's why one of the things I like to do too is protect it with a rag and put a clamp on it. Now, the best clamp to use to not mar it or scratch it or do anything to it is one of those like wood clamps that you see people put wood together with. They're like a long clamp with a squeezy trigger, and they kind of draw in, and they have them in woodworking shops like at Lowe's and stuff like that. But you can also get them at Harbor Freight pretty darn cheap. I take one of those and I'll usually crimp this together, and then I'll take those Allens out, and then I'll release it slowly, pop it apart, put the springs that I want in it, kind of force it back together with that clamp, get these holes all lined up, make sure the diaphragm's not pinched, tighten these all back down, make them snug, and voila, you're good to go. Now, depending if you're going to use what type of boost controller you use will determine what ports you use. You'll notice that in this particular instance, it has 2 top ports on this particular gate and 3 bottom ports. The reason why there's so many on the bottom is just because of orientation. Depending on which way you have this facing, it might be easier if you could use a certain angle off of this to run your vacuum line so it wouldn't get burnt on something or be in the way. So what we do is we give you a couple plugs. Basically plug off the ones on the bottom you're not using. You don't have to plug the top ones. In fact, those are meant to breathe. That way the diaphragm can move in there. This is for a manual boost controller, by the way, or no boost controller at all, just running straight spring for gate pressure. Plug off the 2 that you're not going to use, and then you got your banjo bolt set up here with your bolt and the copper washers. And I'll actually do one for you here. So it'll go copper washer against the body of the controller, or wastegate, sorry, and then copper washer also on the top of this body. So it's basically making a sandwich here. Let me show you. Copper washer under this body, copper washer on top of the body, which I have already on this bolt, like this. And then that does the sealing. The copper washers do the sealing, so there's a copper washer there and there. And you can actually swivel this whichever way you want. And then tighten that down nice and snug, and that's where your vacuum line will go onto. It is imperative that you plug the ones that aren't being used. Now, the water ones don't count. They don't connect into it, so they can be left unplugged, whatever. But the air ones do have to be plugged that you don't use, except for the top. Now, if you're going to use an electronic boost controller, that's a little different story, and you're going to want to follow their directions. But you'll notice that there's 3 plugs. That's because you would end up plugging like this port and this other port, and then whichever one of these you used that you didn't use on the top, you would plug the other one with the last one. This is for electronic boost controller, mind you, because the electronic boost controller will use both up and top part of the wastegate and bottom part of the wastegate, and I'm sure the instructions will be with it. This is just telling you how to actually use the hardware for this to do such a thing. Okay, now, without trying to be too confusing here, I'm now going to show you guys how the bottom of this works. You're going to get this, it's called a fire ring. I call it a seal ring. It's got a taper already into it that matches the taper of the valve. That'll go in there against that. And you see when you actually push it in, make it flush, it puts a little preload on that valve, which in essence seals nice and tight right there. Now, what'll happen is, this is the actual piece you're going to weld fast to the exhaust pipe, and then you're going to cut a hole saw, use a hole saw to cut into the exhaust pipe where you mount this. So for example, let's just say we were going to stick this, hypothetically we have our pipe already ran here and all joined together, and we decided we wanted to go right here. So this piece would end up getting welded right here to this imaginary exhaust pipe coming out of this, like that, in such a way that you don't interfere out here. You want to make the weld nice and tight against the edge, because you're going to end up putting this clamp around this then to fasten it to this. And you'll see that it actually pushes in a little bit as it clamps down. See that? and that gives her a nice tight seal and some preload against that thing, and you use this clamp to do that. That makes the wastegate removable just by taking that clamp on and off for doing things like changing your springs or maintenance or whatever you want. So that's how that goes. We already covered this. This is kind of the same thing, but over here for your dump tube. That's it, guys. That is how one of our typical 44mm wastegates works and gets hooked up and used. They are an awesome piece. Amazing performance out of these babies. You won't be disappointed. Okay, guys, so that's it. How-to video on a 44mm wastegate from JS Racing Products.